Vice President Kamala Harris wants to raise the U.S. corporate tax rate to 28% if she wins the presidency. This is Harris's first major proposal to raise revenue and try to finance some of the spending that she wants to pursue if she wins the White House. Joining us now, Douglas Holtz-Eakin, president of the American Action Forum. And we have, how are you, Doug? It's good to see you.
I'm good. Good to see you,
we don't
Joe.
need to summarize the philosophical differences between the two parties, but they are significant. And this is not surprising. And the proponents of something like this, I listen to what they say, and I guess they make some good points. What would you say?
Well, I have real reservations about this proposal. I mean, number one, let's look at the facts on the ground. Prior to the 2017 Act, the U.S. was losing the headquarters of about 5 American corporations every year. And there were profound political battles about it. You can remember the Benedict Arnold firms and all that. We got the rate down to 21%, about the middle of the pack of the OECD, and that problem has gone away. There hasn't been one firm left the United States since. So it's not broken. Don't mess with it. Second thing is, I understand and I applaud the need for revenue. If you're going to be serious about the debt outlook, you're going to have to be serious about paying for proposals. But the rule of thumb in economics is you first broaden the base as much as you can before you start raising rates. So to start with the corporate rate, which is the most sensitive rate and the one that has the biggest impact on growth, I think it's just misplaced priorities. And so I wouldn't start there. I would start with other things in that tax code.
Is it okay to sort of sow the populist discontent, do you think, Doug? I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but it's just so easy not to connect the dots between all the prosperity that a country enjoys based on the private sector. And it's just it's really easy to bash corporations as greedy profit mongers and that need price controls and, should be precluded from buying back stock and need to pay their fair share. When no one, if you were to really pin them down, no one wants the government to be the main provider of jobs. There's never been a country in the world that succeeded when the government provides the jobs. What's the disconnect? Is it just trying to win elections?
Well, there's the fair amount that's just trying to win elections. In election season, fear and anger are very powerful emotions. They move votes. And so playing on people's fears, playing on their anger at big corporations is something that politicians do. But you do it at some risk, because the reality is if you start pointing fingers at Corporation A, you start asking the question about Corporation B, you have to start deciding, hey, who are the good and bad corporations and how are we going to treat them? And pretty soon your economic policy is a muddle. You're not setting out clear ground rules on which market participants can compete and deliver benefits to American customers. You have them come into Washington and try to beat up their competitors by getting in with the government. That's a recipe for disaster. And so I worry a lot about the current vogue on both the very left and the very right to use the power of the state to get even and to pursue their own agendas. That's not going to be successful economic policy.
Short of raising corporate taxes to raise revenue, how would you address, do you think there is a revenue problem or is it a spending problem? I guess what are we at, about 17 or 18% for revenue? That's about where we've been historically, or should it be a little bit higher? We're at 23% of spending, so that's obvious that's a problem.
Yeah, and I, one more time we'll come on to this show as a former CBO director and implore the American public to recognize that it's great fun to talk about taxing somebody else, but the reality is we do have a spending problem, and it's a spending problem that both candidates have said they're unwilling to address. That's Social Security and Medicare. Those programs are $36 trillion over the next 10 years, well more than anything else you can imagine. Total annual appropriations is going to be 21. So that is the money, and they grow faster than everything else. They're going to grow at 5.5%, Social Security, 7% Medicare. That's faster than revenue will grow. So unless you deal with getting the growth rates in those programs down, you'll never solve the problem by just raising revenue. You'll raise revenue, the gap will be a little bit close, and then it'll widen back out. So we'll be back to where we started. So deal with the spending problem. Yes, you might want to raise some more revenue in the process, but you can't just start with revenue. That won't work.
It must be incredibly frustrating for you and really for all Americans that we're going to go through these two conventions and we're going to hear so much bluster and so much rhetoric and so much, really just a lot of BS. And neither convention is going to address the elephant in the room to any large extent or how to solve it. Neither party.
I mean, to my eye, in the 21st century, we have two big problems. We have poor trend growth. Standard of living doubles every 56 years now. It used to be every 29. And we have very big federal debt. They go hand in hand. So it's time to address the big problems. And, let's get over taxing tips and other sort of sideshows. It's time to get some real issues on the table.
Tariffs. I don't know. There's another issue. But if you're you're a person that has certain principles in the country, and you're like, where do you run? Which party do you run to?
Neither right now. So there are things on which they are agreed, and I think really mistaken. The tariff policies would be that. I'd be hard-pressed to name what we got out of draconian tariffs on China. I don't see their behavior changing. I don't see any great benefits to U.S. consumers. That's going to work? I don't think so. So the tariff policy, in the end, Mr. Trump's $3 trillion tax increase on American consumers, that's not particularly appealing. There are places where they differ, and it's important to point that out as well.
Energy policy,
this administration.
If we were to go on a full, if you were to totally not worry about what things cost and just worry about climate change, that has implications that can be put through with executive order that will have major ramifications for inflation, for growth, for how our economy works.
Sure.
If we were to try to get to net zero by 2030 or 2035, that could be a big deal. That could be a single issue vote, just like abortion is to the left.
But I would argue that it's just as important to ask, how do you get to net zero than wanting to get to net zero? And this administration has chosen the most expensive and inefficient way to get to net zero. All right, it's handing out targeted sectoral subsidies that don't line up and coordinate in any way. It's rife for corruption. Do something that makes sense. Price emissions, let people react, the market will solve this problem. If you make it the American business community to reduce emissions, we will reduce emissions. That's all there is to it.